The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. We are back when the Jints and them bums played in New York, as well as the Yankees. I'm Ralph Tycho with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. The two mavens of the times are here. Mr. Noel Hynd, welcome, sir.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
And Alan Blumkin, the human encyclopedia.
Well, hello there, everybody.
All right. Guys, have a great show. You're going to be talking about trades of the three franchises back in the day. Have a great one, guys.
Thank you, Ralph.
All right. Start
Alan,
with you, Noel.
Okay. Great trades for the Giants. They made a lot of clinkers. I know that. I'm going to just throw out the most memorable one that stands in my mind, and I know you'll know what I'm talking about right away. When I was a kid, 1956, it was June of that year, I believe, and I opened up the newspaper, and there was the two teams that I liked were the Cardinals and the Giants, and both teams, the Cardinals were in fourth place, the Giants were in sixth place, and they both decided to shake things up, and the Cardinals sent, if I'm working from memory, Jackie Brandt, Red Schoendienst, and Bill Sarney to the
ultimate trainee, Dick Littlefield.
Yes, exactly. I think
I once did right after he passed away in 1997. I did presentations on him and all his trades. Nobody would believe it. He was traded
17 times or something, wasn't he?
Yeah, like 10 times, and he was lefty, and today he'd be one of those one-out lefty relievers. Go ahead, and they gave up. Go ahead.
He went from St. Louis to the Giants in that trade, right?
Yeah, right, exactly, yeah.
Yeah. And there was a pitcher who went the other way, right?
Yeah, it was Don Little.
That's right.
Yeah, the one who pitched the Wirtz. Yeah.
Yeah, the famous guy who got Wirtz out in that important play in the World Series with some help in center field, but nonetheless he got his guy. Anyway, I mean, several of my favorite players are in there, and it just seemed weird to suddenly see Red Schoendienst in a New York Giants uniform at second base, and then to see all those ex-Giants with the Cardinals. But for some reason, the Giants and the Cardinals did a lot of dealing around then. Maybe you know more about it than I do, because Wilhelm went from the Giants to the Cardinals, and
they got Lockman back in that trade.
And Lockman went and then came back.
Yeah,
and
Giants gave up Stark, Lockman, and Ray Catt.
Right
to the Cardinals.
And it seemed what struck me. I understood what they were trying to do. They were trying to give Don Blasingame room to play second base, and the Cardinals always needed a shortstop, so they got Dark. But throwing in the two catchers, I could never kind of figure out exactly what they were trying to accomplish with that, other than to get new faces. I mean, Cott and Sarney, that was...
no, Sarney never played for them because of his heart problems.
Ah, that's right. Go ahead.
Yeah, Bill Veeck wrote in one of his books that when Frank Lane was running the White Sox, and Veeck was running the Browns, they used to trade utility infielders back and forth just to get newspaper space. So he called them cat and dog trades. Maybe the cat that Sardi was, one of those.
Did the Cardinals know about Sarney's heart problem when they traded him?
Probably.
Yeah.
But Frank Lane was running the Cardinals then.
Right.
And then he tried to get rid of Musial after that, and that's when Gussie Busch fired him.
Yeah, but that wasn't until 57 or something, was
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know in George Vesey's biography of Musial, they recounted the time that Frank Lane tried to get on the team bus, and he'd just been fired, and Musial, who was a pretty mild-mannered guy, was instrumental in just kicking him off the bus. They were furious. And Musial, from what I've read, was particularly angry about the Shangens trade because he
and Shangens was very tight.
Yeah, they were roommates for years and years, and it was not a good trade for the redhead either. He was just not suited. He was a Midwestern guy, just not suited to New York.
Well, the next year they sent him to Milwaukee.
Right, and then he had tuberculosis for a while, but he certainly helped Milwaukee. That was a Bobby Thompson trade, wasn't it, to bring Bobby Thompson?
Yeah, they brought
back
Bobby Thompson and Danny O'Connell, who was traded by the Pirates a few years earlier to the Braves and got worse every year. And the third one was a pitcher named Ray Crone.
Right.
That's funny because the Giants had Mueller, Lockman, and Thompson on the roster to start the 1958 season, and before the spring training was over, they got rid of all three of them. The only two players I think that they brought over that they wanted to bring over to San Francisco were Willie Mays and Johnny Antonelli.
Mm-hmm. Mention of Antonelli, of course, brings up another Giants trade, which actually I think worked out pretty well for the principals. Antonelli was kind of resented in Boston because he'd signed a big contract at age, whatever it was, 18 or 19, and never really pitched that well for them for any extended period. And then getting over to the Giants, he had a chance to be a regular guy in the rotation, and I believe he won 20 games in was it 54?
4, yeah. He was playing 1-7 with a 2.29 ERA that led the National League, and if they had Cy Youngs back then, he probably would have gotten it that year for the National League. And then later on, in 1966, when they were in 6th place, he won 20 games.
That's right. That's right. He was about the only pitcher who won any games that year. 56, they started the season in 6th place, and they stayed there.
Yeah. But
go ahead.
Yeah, but like you, I got a hold of a newspaper that June afternoon, and I started reading that, and I was shocked because in those days we identified players with teams, and all of a sudden that trade really shook a lot of people up.
Mm-hmm.
The Shaney Stark trade, and it's funny because in Dark's one full year with the Cardinals, he played third base in 1957. They moved Kenny Boyer out to center field, and they brought in Eddie Casco to play shortstop.
Right.
And then they traded the Cardinals traded Dark about a month into the 1958 season to the Cubs for Jim Brosnan.
That's right, yeah.
And Bobby Thompson went from the Giants to the Cubs in 1958. So Thompson and Dark were teammates on the 1958 Cub team.
That is strange because you don't think of them as Cubs, certainly, and they weren't there very long.
No, it's like Hodges and Snyder being teammates on the Mets for about 6 weeks until Hodges went to manage the Senators.
I think in that era with the Mets, anybody who had played even briefly for the Dodgers could have gotten a job with the Mets.
Oh yeah,
they just Clem anybody who was still able to put on the uniform and put on the spikes and get on the field, it seemed could get onto the Mets roster. I mean, to some degree, it was great to see, the players who had been with the Dodgers back there, but it also seemed kind of a fake because everybody knew they were, I think the charitable way is past their prime, and it just wasn't the same.
It's funny because at the 1998 Sabre Convention in San Francisco, one of the guests was Eddie Brissou. And I went up after some panel and told him that besides Willie Mays, he was the only former New York Giant that played for the Mets. He said he didn't know that.
It's strange because I think the Mets did get some people who had been Giant property.
Antonelli participated in the first spring training, but he retired. He may have gotten into a couple of exhibition games, but he never played a regular season game for them.
Yeah. Did he know how bad it was going to be, or did he just
maybe
really
he sensed it? Maybe he sensed it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're right. The Dodgers, anybody with Dodger connections, like another one that they got from the Dodgers was Charlie Neal, who they thought was going to be a superstar after the '59 World Series, and unraveled so fast it was unbelievable.
Did he have drinking problems?
He may have had, but he went downhill like an avalanche. He went downhill.
Yeah, I remember. I went to. Everybody remembers this date in Mets history, but I went to the first doubleheader that the Giants played against the Mets in, I think it was maybe May or June of 1962. It was sold out, and the Giants, of course, took two games very, very easily. But I can remember a ground ball hit to Charlie Neal, and it was about 10 feet to his left, and he never even moved. He never even saw it. And then I started to hear stories about him drinking, and I kind of put two and two together and was wondering whether that was the problem, because you're right, on the Mets, I think he maybe hit 14 home runs that year, but you or I might have been able to hit one or two down those lines if we could have gotten around on the ball or slapped it the other way. So, there's 14 home runs in a big ballpark, and there's 14 home runs if you can pull in the Polo Grounds. And I think beyond that, he hit like 236 or 240 or something. And defensively, it was in retrospect, it was kind of sad because he could have been a fine player.
I know that, yeah. But
tell me, let's switch to the Yankees for a second.
Okay, yeah, they made several.
When you were growing up, just to clarify, were you a Yankee fan or a Dodger fan?
Yes, I was a Yankee fan.
Yankee fan.
I hated the Dodgers because I want where I grew up. No kids my age were born in Queens. Everybody was either from Brooklyn or the Bronx. So I was from the Bronx, and you took on Yankees right away. In 1951, I started rooting for them, and so I followed them very, very closely, and most of the trades they made worked out. There were a few that didn't, but most of them did.
I missed your point. Most of the trades that the Yankees
did work out. Yeah.
They did work out.
They got Bob Cazava from Washington for Bob Porterfield, who have a couple of good years down in Washington, a couple other guys who were washed up. And then in late 51, they had a habit of getting players on waivers from the National League. And they got Johnny Sain, who was having a horrific year with the Braves, and they paid $50,000 and sent the minor league right-hander by the name of Lou Burdette to the Braves, and of course he became one of the top pitchers in the National League for about 5-6 years.
Would it be your opinion that one reason the Yankees could pull off trades and get players like that was they had a very
they had
deep farm system and a great checkbook.
Yeah, and they said that some of the Yankee farm teams could have beaten out some of the lower teams in the American League, particularly at that point.
That was probably the case.
Yeah, and then they made another deal with Washington in early 1952, where they sent Jackie Jensen, who wasn't going to be at Mantle. Jackie Jensen and Spec Shea and a couple others for Irv Noren.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really surprised that Washington get up Noren, because he had 2 years there where he played every day and did pretty well. But Jensen became extra baggage. I don't think Stengel liked him all that much.
Mm-hmm. Jensen's wife was a great athlete too, you know.
Yeah, Zoe Olsen. She was a diver, I think.
Yeah, she was an Olympic caliber diver.
Yeah. But Washington, after 1953, they sent Jensen to the Red Sox for Mickey McDermott and Tom Umfeld, who was a center fielder who had replaced Dom DiMaggio there. And I read McDermott came out with a book a number of years ago called The Funny Thing Happened to on the Way to Cooperstown. And after a tough loss, he was coming out of the clubhouse, and this woman came up to him and said, tough loss, Mickey. And he said, screw you, lady, except he didn't use screw, he used the F-bomb. And it turned out that the woman was Tom Yawkie's wife. So she went up to Tom, says, he was won 18 games that year, and says, get rid of him. So they sent him to Washington.
Huh.
But and Jensen, with the Red Sox, turned out to be a tremendous player for 6 years before the fear of flying caught up with him.
Yeah, because he hated flying. He was afraid of flying, and with some justification back in those days, because you just never knew when one of those airplanes was going to fall out of the sky. And then, as you were probably just about to say, the American League was expanding, so you were going to start having road trips to California and Minnesota. It was no longer just the East Coast plus Kansas City.
Yeah, but he sat out in 1960 and came back for one last year in 61, where he had a mediocre year and couldn't handle the flying to L.A. or Minnesota, or wherever. So he retired for good after that year. Then, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, didn't the Yankees get like 23 players over the course of 10 years from Kansas City?
Oh, yeah. What happened there, let me bring up a couple of trades before that. Okay, they traded, they got Ewell Blackwell, who was washed up from the Reds in late 1952, and one of the 4 players they sent over to Cincinnati was Jim Greengrass, who was an outfielder that had a couple of good years before Bias did him in. And then in 1954, they had 2 big ones. They traded, besides selling Vic Raschi to the Cardinals, I was up half the night crying when that happened. I was 10. I heard that on the radio. I was eating supper, and I started crying like crazy. And they got Eno Slaughter from the Cardinals for 4 players, one of whom turned out to be Bill Verdon, who the Cardinals kept for a couple of years and then sent to the Pirates for Bobby Del Greco and Dick Littlefield in 1956. Mm-hmm. So Littlefield
after he had been the Rookie of the Year, by the way, Verdon, in I think 55 maybe.
Yeah. And Dick Littlefield went from the Pirates to the Cardinals, and he was there a month before the Cardinals traded him to the Giants. The Giants were so enamored by having him that they tried to send him to the Dodgers in the Jackie Robinson deal, which was canceled, and then they were so happy to get him back that they sent him to the Cubs. Lilfield's story is just one day go to his page in Baseball Reference and look at all the transactions that he was involved in. It's unbelievable. Anyway, and after 1954, they sent Woodling and pitcher Jim McDonald and Willie Miranda, a few others, to the Orioles for essentially Bob Turley, Don Larson, and Billy Hunter. And Larson was coming off a 3-21 season, but 2 of his wins were over the Yankees, so they took him at a trade. And I was very upset, and Stengel was really upset. Woodling, who had been a very productive player for 5 years, had an injury-riddled bad year, hit 250. Noren had a career year, hit 319. So they trade Woodling, who went on to have several good seasons after that, primarily with Cleveland, and Noren went back to, I think it was 260, and was gone from the team in 1956. Okay. Then we come to Kansas City. The owner there, the Yankees basically put in, was a businessman named Arnold Johnson, who the year before had put together a syndicate and bought Yankee Stadium. So Webb and Topping forced him to buy the Kansas City A's, who were Kansas City was a top Yankee farm club at that point. And he had to buy Kansas City A's. He had to buy the stadium that they played in. And Weiss managed to get several of his assistants installed as management over there. So it began. They operated the A's basically as a farm team until Arnold Johnson died, and his estate in 1961 sold the team to Finley. Finley, and that. But yeah,
a lot of that bad blood in Kansas City toward the Yankees lasted for generations.
Oh yeah,
I think.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, one of the ones that they pulled off with them was they got Shanson Ditmar. It was 1957, and they got May of 1959. They got Hector Lopez and Ralph Terry. Ralph Terry had originally been Yankee property, and they sent them out to get experience to the A's. So they got him back, and they gave up Norm Seaburn, who Stengel did not like because he messed up a few fly balls in left field. And the 2 sore arms who were great in 1956, Johnny Cooks and Tom Sturman. Mm-hmm. Of course, neither of them. Seaburn became a decent player for a number of years. And,
yeah, I believe as a first baseman, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, but Cooks and Sturman were both basically. Then, of course, the big one at the end of 1960, the end of 1959, excuse me, when they sent Hank Bauer, who was 37 years old and had lost it, and lived in one of the suburbs there, and wanted to go home, so they packaged him. He was 37 years old. They packaged. I'm sorry, they sent not Seaburn in the early trade. It was Jerry Lumpy, who turned out to be a decent player. They sent Seaburn, Larson, who was getting sore on by then, and the ultimate Marvin Eugene Throneberry. And they got Maris, Roger Maris, Joe DeMaestri, who was a backup shortstop for a couple of years, and the first baseman Kent Hadley. Mm-hmm. And Frank Lane, who was running the Indians then, said he knew when he sent Maris to the A's that he was sending him on a one-stop trip to the Yankees. But they got Vic Power and Woody Held in that trade. He said he had to do it for his own ball club.
Yeah.
And Frank Lane, of course, traded Rocky Colavito to the Tigers, and that basically was the end of him in Cleveland.
Yeah.
But and those are the major trades that they made during that era.
Another big one which goes back earlier, when the Yankees just always seemed to pluck the National League player that they needed.
Yeah.
Was Jim Constanti, the relief pitcher.
Yeah, he had one decent year for them.
Yeah, but it was a very good year. Wasn't it like 15-3 or something?
No, it was 14-10, but something like that. But he saved a lot of games.
Yes, exactly.
And
then of course,
Enos
Slaughter from the Cardinals.
Yeah, I addressed that, and then Slaughter was there for like a year and a half. They sent him to the A's, and when they forced Rizzuto into retirement the next year, they got Slaughter back. And Slaughter hit a 3-run home run in Game 3 of the 1956 World Series, which turned it around. One of the things that turned the series around. So he was useful. He was 30. He was like 40 years old by that time. Yeah, and still could contribute. Let's go over to the Dodgers. Your memory is probably better than mine, but what stands out to you as a really great trade that they made, and a really terrible trade that they made? Okay,
go ahead. You talk. Go ahead.
The biggest one was in June 1951 when they got Andy Pafko from the Cubs. And they got Pafko, Rube Walker, Johnny Schmitz they didn't keep very long, and Wayne Terwilliger, who they also didn't keep very long. And they traded Gene Hermansky, a sore-arm pitcher named Joe Hatton, a sore-arm catcher named Bruce Edwards, and a utility infielder named Eddie Mixis. Mixis would go on to be the regular second baseman on the Cubs until Gene Baker came along the end of the 53 season. And the Dodgers had basically an all-star at every position. And Pafko is most famous as a Dodger for leaning against the wall watching Bobby Thompson's home run. But he was a very, very good player. And
and was in the World Series with 3 different teams, if I remember.
Yeah. And he was a regular there in 52, got into the World Series. And then before the 53 season, they wanted to promote Jim Gilliam from Montreal. And Gilliam was a second baseman. And probably at that stage was better defensively than Jackie Robinson. Excuse me. And so they had to create a space for Jackie Robinson. And when the 53, they sent Pafko, they sold Pafko to the Milwaukee Braves. And Pafko enjoyed that because he was from Wisconsin. So he played on pennant winners with the Cubs, the Dodgers, and the Braves. And a friend of mine from Sabre, the late Eddie Gold, was a huge Cub fan. Until he died, he could never understand why the Cubs made that trade.
Because the Cubs made a lot of bad trades.
Yeah, he did a presentation at one of the Sabre meetings on bad Cub moves, starting with the Pafko trade and ending with them letting Greg Maddux go to the Braves as a free agent. And it was hysterical. Yeah, it was hysterical, yeah. Brock, Dick Rowe told me when I interviewed him in 1985, I asked him about Brock. He said, we thought we got the worst of it. And Brock started playing like a maniac, and they asked Brock why, and he said he got out of prison. Yeah, because the Cubs had that idiotic college of coaches going on there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and he said, one guy would tell him one thing, another one would tell him, he was so screwed up there that he welcomed getting out of there.
Because the Cardinals, I assume, just put him in center field and let
left
him play.
field. They put him in left field. Yeah, they have Flood in center field. Yeah, they put him in left field, and they won the pennant in the World Series that year in 1964. And Brock became a Hall of Famer.
I'm blanking on this. Did Brock eventually move to center after Flood left?
No,
he was always over in left, huh?
Yeah, I think he had a strong arm.
You don't think he had a strong
No,
arm?
I think he had a weak arm.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, he's the leadoff, and Flood's last year with them was the Cardinals was 1969. That's when he refused to report to the Phillies in that trade. And
I have to think, going back to the Brooklyn Dodgers, one of the best deals they ever pulled off was picking up Sal Magley for essentially nothing.
From the Indians, yeah.
From the Indians.
Yeah.
And Magley was the missing ingredient in winning the pennant in '56.
Yeah, he was 13-5, pitched a no-hitter toward the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And a story I read in the biography of Carl Furillo is when Magley was on the Giants and beating the Dodgers all the time. And when Magley came to the Dodgers, Furillo is the first one he sees, and it figures that that he's going to be very, very badly treated by the Dodgers. And Furillo called him a paisan. Because they were both Italian. And Magley was accepted.
Mm-hmm.
But he only had the 1 year there. And he wound up getting sold to the Yankees the next year. He was 41 by then. So, he got a late start. He wasn't a regular in the Giants rotation until he was 33 years old.
Yeah. I always thought that had circumstances smiled better on Magley, he would have been a Hall of Fame player. When he was pitching in the early 50s, there was nobody better. You look at a couple of those years, he's like 26-5, and you probably can remember the stats better than I do, but he was almost unbeatable.
As I said, he was 33 years old. And he always said, he jumped the Giants to go to the Mexican League. And when that folded up, he came back and couldn't get back until the suspensions were lifted in late 1949. And he said he fell under the influence down there of a very good Cuban pitcher who in the 20s who was primarily with Cincinnati named Del Luque.
Right. Who was also with the Giants briefly.
Yeah, and he said Luque had basically taught him how to pitch.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if he had been in the majors, he probably would have gotten there before because he could control all the stuff.
Yeah.
Dodgers did not like seeing him on the mound.
Luque apparently taught him how to basically get mean and come inside on batters.
Oh, yeah.
Pitch the way you had to pitch in Cuba.
Yeah, he said he never, Magley said he never purposely threw with a batter's head.
Well, he hit a couple, but I know DeRocher was on him for throwing at people. DeRocher ordered him to throw at people several times, if I remember.
Yeah, DeRocher once ordered, I think it was Jansen, to throw at somebody, and he didn't. And DeRocher fined him after that.
Yeah.
But
Leo would be a topic for another one of our discussion. Maybe we should do that when Uncle Ralph is here to listen to us.
Yeah. Leo was a piece of work. He was really a piece of work. And the other trade that the Giants made was very good. In 1950, they got Jim Hearn from the Cardinals on waivers.
Mm-hmm.
And he went on to win the ERA title in 1950. And
he was 12 and
11 and 4, 11 and 4. But he had the 10 complete games,
right?
Which was the criterion back then. That was the last year that was used. Now, of course, if they use that, forget it. And he only pitched 134 innings that year.
I don't think anybody pitched 10 complete games last year, did they?
The league didn't have 10 complete games last year.
Sorry,
I think the high was 2.
Yeah,
by a
okay.
pitcher. Yeah.
And it's usually somebody who's got a shutout and has a low number of pitches thrown. So they think, okay. I remember somebody from the Yankees did a complete game is like a lead story now.
I know that.
The game how many Newcomb and Robin Roberts and Warren Spahn, all of those guys.
Forget it. It's not like that anymore.
Yeah, they would have like 40 starts a year and often 19 or 20 complete games. Particularly Robin Roberts, it seems. Wasn't he like 21 and 20 one year or something? 21 and 19?
19 and 18, yeah. The Spahn threw 382 complete games. I think Roberts had something in all 300s. Yeah, 382 complete games.
Yeah, and Spahn was away for a while too, wasn't he?
Yeah,
in the Army.
Yeah.
So his number would have even been higher.
Been over 400 easily.
Wow! Imagine that on an arm.
You can't, because these in those days it wasn't considered a job unless you finished the game. In fact, Ali Reynolds' first year with the Yankees, 1947, he was 17 and 6, but he was relieved a lot of times in the 8th and 9th inning by Joe Page. They questioned Reynolds' courage.
Yeah,
because he had. Can you imagine that now? The pitcher goes 7 innings. And they look to the dugout to be taken out.
Mm-hmm. I can remember Whitey Ford was criticized for not finishing.
Yeah, with a Royal, 1961,
Yeah. He won. Ford won a lot of games.
Won 25 finally. Games that year. He's 25 and 4. But the thing is that in those days they were expected to go 9 innings. Now you get 5 innings out of them. And there's a rookie league team out in Brooklyn. A friend of mine went to one of their games. I think it was last year or the year before. Starter goes 5 innings, and they use a different pitcher for each of the last 4 innings. They teach this down in the minors, that you're not going 9 innings. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
And,
this has been fast. Go ahead.
Yeah. I think it's insane, but I have no control over it.
Yeah, exactly. I think we've hit our time limit for today.
Okay.
This has been fascinating as usual. I think I'm supposed to say this is from Comfortably Zoned Radio
Network, yeah.
And Alan Blumkin, it is always a pleasure, and we will speak again, I hope, next week. And I'm going to sign off now on behalf of Ralph. So thank you again, Alan, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, Noel.
Take care. Bye-bye.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned Network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.